The views expressed on this special broadcast of the Take 12 radio show do not necessarily reflect those of KHLT Recovery Broadcasting or its affiliates. KHLT is not affiliated with any particular 12-step fellowship.
A very scary experience.
You know, God is a solution. God, the 12 step.
I like where he's going here.
Helps the community grow, helps us grow.
Monty has done a phenomenal job.
Lack of open-mindedness.
And you're talking about taking people through a spiritual process and getting them into recovery.
Thanks, Monty, and thanks for all your support.
We need spirituality to make this thing work long term.
It's an absolute pleasure. He certainly knows a lot of people.
This is one of the places that is about the business of the solution.
And now, broadcasting on location somewhere in the vast expanse of the Pacific Northwest, it's the over-opinionated 12-stepologist, the Monty Man.
That's right. Okay, I think my software's working now. Well, welcome everyone to another fine episode of the Take 12 Recovery Radio Show. Roger McDermott is on the phone from Southern California. Hey, Roger.
Greetings, everybody, and a happy Labor Day to all. I am doing well. It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood in Huntington Beach, California.
And there, if you're watching on YouTube, is Mr. Cool. There's Vid. There's Dave. Oh, it just spun around. There's Dave Fleming right there, wearing his shades because he's cool, right? Because you're cool.
Yeah, when the sun shines on you, you're cool.
You're cool. Okay.
Gotta wear your shades inside. Isn't there a song like that? I wear my sunglasses at night.
Try not to sing, Dave.
Why?
Good idea, Dave.
So what you don't know, listeners, is this.
I didn't. Do you want to do it on my real singing voice?
There is a song about.
Yeah.
Isn't it Don Henley about something? Boys of Summers, right?
These are mean.
Boys of Summer. Something with your sunglasses on. I don't know. Anyway,
just jealous.
What the listeners don't know is this is take 2 of recording the show. We had some FUBAR stuff going on earlier, but I think we're working okay right now. See if the fluff machine's working. Yep, it's working because I had to use that in a minute. Well, happy Labor Day for those of you who are laborers and who have been part of the backbone of this country. You know what? My dad's very first job was selling Fuller Brush.
I remember Fuller Brush.
Yeah.
My grandparents used to buy Fuller Brush.
Yeah.
I remember the guy coming to the door.
Yep. And
the Fuller Brush man's here. The Fuller Brush man's here.
He was a Fuller Brush salesman, and then he sold car insurance for AAA.
Did he also sell Rainbow Vacs?
No, he did not. I sold Filter Queens, which was Rainbow's enemy.
Yeah, I tried to do the Rainbow because I think the concept is great. I wish it would have taken off.
Yeah, but you know what? If water actually...
could have improved it a little more.
If water actually filtered, you wouldn't get high when you smoked from a bong. Think about that. Think about that.
Wow.
That's profound.
Isn't it?
I don't know. Let me go try it and test it out, Monty.
Get the bong out and try it.
I'm going to put some hemp in it, though, not
how many
not
stoners,
marijuana.
You know how many stoners we sold Filter Queens to because of that one statement? They're like, that makes sense,
Yo,
man.
you can vacuum your floor and smoke out of it.
The topic.
Wow, now there's going to be some people out there looking up used freaking machines. Hey, let's try that out.
I'll turn your Rainbow vacuum cleaner into a bong.
Oh my
gosh!
When the police come, it'll just be vacuuming my floor. That's it.
I was just cleaning house. The topic this week.
What's that smoke coming out of your vacuum cleaner?
Oh my God!
Sure smells like marijuana.
It's no fun now though because it's legal everywhere. So you can't have any fun with it. Can
It's
you?
not legal everywhere, Monty.
Well, in a lot of places.
And we're reaching people around the world.
That's true.
Yeah, come on, Monty.
Okay, I'm sorry. All right.
Oh, no. I'll wait.
Okay,
I'll wait.
you wait. Listen,
Okay.
This morning I had a tremendous, delicious, fabulous, awesome cup of Black Rifle coffee.
How delicious was it, Monty?
It was phenomenal.
Tell us about it, Monty.
Well, Black Rifle Coffee is a veteran-owned coffee company.
That's
it was founded in
fantastic.
2014. You buy a bag, they send a bag to the troops. Bag of coffee, that is. And it is the smoothest, it is the richest, it is the best tasting coffee I've ever had, with the exception of Mama's coffee. Back in the day when Mama made coffee. When Mama was alive making coffee. Maybe she's making coffee in heaven now. But her coffee was amazing. And I tasted this stuff for the first time about a year ago. And I joined the Black Rifle Coffee Club, and I've been hooked ever since. You can get them in the little pods, or you can get them at, fully beaned.
And where can you get Black Rifle Coffee?
BlackRifleCoffee.com.
Is it in the stores?
You can get it at some of the barista cabins, I call them. You know, the little coffee drive-ups. Sometimes they will have
the old photomat booths.
Little photomat booths, right? Some of those will carry it, but you're going to get them at a better price if you go to BlackRifleCoffee.com than you will at the barista stand. So there's my pitch for them. They're not.
Monty,
Yes.
here's a news flash.
Yeah.
I'm going to blackrifle.com today and ordering pods for my curate.
Oh, nice.
I'm going and doing it. Everybody else, I encourage them to do the same or buy the ground.
Yeah. You can get it whole bean too if you want.
I prefer bean myself.
You prefer bean?
Yep.
You a bean dude?
Yep. I like to grind it up fresh. In fact, it's a different brand, but I grind mine up in the morning and make a cup, and
there you go.
Good stuff.
There you go. And by the way, listeners are going, "Wow, they're paying you to say that." No, they're not. They are not paying us anything to say that. I am saying that because I believe in what they're doing as a veteran-owned company, made in America, and sending our troops coffee as well. That's why I'm doing it.
Yep. Me too.
Yeah, right on. All right. The topic this week, spiritual experience versus spiritual awakening. Before we do that, though, in my hand right here, if you're watching on YouTube, is the book, 12 Essential Insights for Emotional Sobriety by Dr. Alan Berger, PhD. If you ever feel like you're getting stuck in your recovery and, I'm just tired of going to those meetings. They talk about the same thing over and over again, and the coffee's still Folgers, not Black Rifle. I'm just getting sick of it. You want to get unstuck from your recovery because you're feeling stuck. You need to get this book by Dr. Alan Berger, a Take 12 Recovery radio contributor. You can visit many of his workshops that I have done with him by going to take12radio.com and clicking on the Recovery Workshops banner. And there you'll find shows with Dr. Berger. But check out his book, 12 Essential Insights for Emotional Sobriety. There you go. And you can get it at Amazon or abphd.com for a autographed copy.
I would have to say that is one of those areas that most people are not aware of.
Emotional sobriety?
Yep.
Yep, you're right.
Not connected the dots.
Nope. Yep. Bill Wilson, co-founder of Alcoholics Anonymous, called emotional sobriety the next frontier.
Yeah, I don't remember ever hearing any of that. I'm sure I did back in the day. It wasn't until probably the last, 4 or 5 years.
That's right.
Yeah. I share that with my clients as well.
So there you go. We do have a weekly whine.
Which has nothing to do with emotional sobriety.
No. It's where I get to whine about something, or anybody here gets to whine about something they're totally powerless over, perhaps. So actually, I'm going to turn over the whine to Dave. Because he's got a whine and he's got a win, too. Right? So what's your whine, Dave?
Just one. So I noticed on your Facebook page you posted something about Walmart in Albany, Oregon.
Oh, no.
right?
Yep.
Call them out that they don't have any bags available anymore unless you buy one of their fancy
blues, fancy.
the
10 by 12
yeah,
bags.
I mean they're pretty small. They're not even as big as one of those brown paper bags,
right?
That you could actually get and recycle if you wanted to.
99 cents, by the way, per
98
bag.
cents.
Oh, 98 cents. That's
yes.
right, per bag.
And they don't even have them at the register in the self checkouts.
Yeah.
They had a guy that was the bag police, and he was standing in front of the cart.
Bag police.
And he's like, "Well, how many would you like?" And I was just like, "What?" I'm like, "Okay, give me 2." I'm like, "Oh, I'm fine," because we use those all the time. But it gets even worse because I'm like, okay, this is what Monty was talking about.
Yeah.
So I go and I look around at the other like registers, and there's like nothing. Like there's no bags. And I'm watching people go out of the store with cartfuls of stuff that's not bagged at all.
Right.
Which part of their deal is like they were trying to watch out for people stealing stuff. Like you could actually steal more stuff by it not being in a bag, I would think, because they don't really check your receipt.
Right.
They look at a couple things and go, okay, here you go.
Right.
But so here's the other part of that, right? So we had gone to the fair, and I had cash to go to the fair.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I'm going, and I scanned in a couple things, and I notice it says no cash accepted. I'm like, what?
Oh, to get into the fair? No cash?
No. This is still at Walmart.
Oh, Walmart. Okay.
It says credit only. And I'm like, okay. So then I go over to the register next to it, and it says something a little different. So it tells me right there that they could actually go in there and program it and change the program.
Right.
If they want to. And I said, do you guys not accept cash anymore? And this rude lady, I wish I would have wrote down her name.
Yeah.
She says, "I'm sorry, sir, but I just came on my shift and I don't know what's going on." I'm like, so do you guys not take cash anymore? What do I do with my groceries? Do I need to put them back? Or I'm like, what is the deal? And she's like, "Sir, I just came on my shift." And I'm all right. So do any of the other registers take cash? And she says, "Yeah, the ones where there's actually a cashier at." I'm like, okay. What the? So I put the stuff back in the cart, and we go over to the one with the cashier. It was just like, that's just like the taste, like the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because we kind of saw this coming. I knew they were going to do this. I didn't know that they were going to like literally like say one register you can't have cash. And I think it's because they've had some problem with theft. But the way that they're have it set up now actually encourages more theft. I think. Anyway. And then yesterday when I was this is tied into the same thing. I was at Safeway and getting a few things.
Right.
And I was waiting for the guy in front of me. He got his stuff and he checked out and got, his receipt and everything. And the guy says, would you like a bag? And I said, yeah, plastic, please. And the guy comes back and he says, "Excuse me." And the cashier's like, "Yes, can I help you?" He goes, "I thought plastic bags were outlawed in Corvallis last year," or whenever it was. And he's all,
"Is this the bagger that said that, or is this some guy?"
This is some guy, customer that
just
already went through.
Right.
Like he had to come back and put his 2 cents in. And I'm like, looking at him like, there's so many things I want to say, but I'm just like, I just want to. And the guy says, he says, well, they made these reusable. They're bigger, they're heavy duty, they got bags on them. He didn't go into the big explanation, but that's what they are. If you've ever been to Safeway recently,
sure,
at least in our area. And he's like, well, that's just stupid. I would just like get home and throw them in the garbage. Like, that's not, he goes, I guess I better be more like ecologically, considerate and
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Maybe you
like,
should be.
I'm like, dude, you got to do what you got to do.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, Dave.
And I'm like, there's just so much I wanted to say, but the guy's like, I said, how about, do you run into this often? And he's like, no. He goes, I try to like stay neutral and not bring up anything. And then the lady next to us in the next register, because I'm saying I like the plastic because I reuse them all the time, and I keep a couple in my truck and I use them for whatever, unless something spills in them. And the lady next to she goes, yeah, and if you got like a dirty diaper or the child throws up and you put the stuff in there and you tie it up. And I'm like, yeah, right. And I'm just like, what? I'm waiting for. I was literally expecting this guy to be standing outside the door waiting for me to tell me how like evil I am for using a plastic bag. Anyway, okay, so
that's great.
I'm done with that.
Okay.
But on the positive side,
yes,
like I took cash at the fair for my own reasons. I don't want to.
This is a win, right?
Yeah. So
Windmill.
I'm just for my own personal preference. I don't want, especially at a big event like a state fair, giving out my credit card information.
Right. Sure.
So we're paying cash, and we go into a couple of these little, literally like it was either a carnival or you had a booth where they were selling stuff. Like everybody and their brother was selling something. And so we get to these guys.
Right. The Oregonian. Yeah.
And I'm looking at it like, I want to get one of those stickers for my truck, little one for the window. And then I saw their shirts, and I'm like, cool. So I'm like, I'll take one of these shirts. And I said, you still accept cash, right? Because there's some places that wouldn't take cash.
Right.
And I go, cash is still good in this country, isn't it? And he goes, yeah. And he goes, what? Cash is still good. And we got into a little conversation about that, but it was like so uplifting to hear somebody like having that conversation. I know there's a lot of people out there and concerned about that, but yeah, just some of this nonsense that just blows me away. Oh, and I don't know, this is probably more along the weekly whine. I forgot to throw this in there.
Throw it in there.
Did you hear that Oregon is going to get on board with California and going to force everybody to get electric cars?
Yeah, I saw the little map on the news of the states that are jumping on the bandwagon there. Yeah, well, good luck with that.
Joke.
Yeah.
It ain't going to happen.
No. In fact, a good friend of mine posted that the bag situation at the store really isn't Walmart's fault. It's Governor Brown, under a mandate from Governor Brown, that they do this bag thing, which I thought was interesting, because if that was the case, they'd all be falling in line like they did with the mask mandate. But Safeway here in town in Albany, right, they're using plastic bags, they're using paper bags, and they're bagging it for you, and they're taking it out to your car for you, just like in the old days.
Right.
They're not doing that, and they're not charging you for the bags. We went there, my wife went there the other day, and so she's looking on the receipt, and there's no charge for bags unless it's in the price of
I think sometimes they have to actually manually put it in there. So the person ringing you up may not put it in there, because I know that when I go to Safeway, they charge you for the bags.
Oh, do they? They didn't.
Yeah,
charge
I mean
you
it's fine because I reuse them, but
well,
yeah, a lot of these things that they're saying is a mandate isn't a mandate. It's just a.
It's not a law. It's not a no, and some places won't let you bring your own bag. Because who knows what, you may have touched it or something.
Well, they might as well just shut the doors down and go out of business then, because that's just ridiculous.
So what does all this have to do with the recovery? Let me tell you, it's this kind of stuff why you should read 12 Essential Insights to Emotional Sobriety, so you don't become emotionally dependent.
It goes back to the Serenity Prayer, right?
It does.
What's the Serenity Prayer say?
Learn to not accept anything that I can change myself or not change.
And the wisdom to know the difference.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah. Well, there you go. Roger, what do you think about all this craziness?
I'm working on my emotional sobriety at the moment.
There you go.
Wow.
All right, we're
I
gonna.
think I'm having a spiritual experience, Monty.
Are you good?
Yeah.
Good. All right. Now that we've taken 20 minutes of the show up talking about whining. And also some cool stuff. We like to have fun on this show. So there are people that listen to this show that post. They'll post a remark and they'll put the actual show started at 2.00, whatever the number is, on the reading, so people can tune in from that point. If you're on YouTube, you can usually find a spot where you want to start the show if you don't want to participate in our nonsense.
There's my weekly whine about that. That's like going to a meeting and not ever participating in fellowship.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what I liken that to.
Yeah. So there you go. We are going to whine on this show because we can. Da-da-da. All right. So, spiritual experience versus spiritual awakening. So to put it in a real nutshell, I'm gonna read. There's an appendix in the back of the AA Big Book that I want to read here in a few minutes, but this is something that just popped in my head. I don't know what you guys think of it. But I wrote down spiritual experience is something that happens to you. A spiritual awakening is something that happens in you. I had a spiritual experience when I dropped acid. It wasn't a spiritual awakening. It was just an experience I had that I deemed spiritual at the time because I was, so cool. Right?
Should I put my sunglasses back on?
Yeah, but sometimes you can be spiritual. But I think a spiritual awakening is a process of transformation. I think there's a transformation that happens when you awaken spiritually. Now, please do not get this confused with the woke movement. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about a legitimate spiritual experience or awakening.
You should give the definition of the difference between awoke and awaken.
Yeah, but I don't know if I want to get into that too much.
It's like one sentence.
Okay.
Because some people are confused about that.
Okay. Well, woke, spiritual awakening. I just put it that way.
Every time a bell rings, an angel gets its wings.
I think a spiritual awakening is a transformation that happens inside of you. It isn't just a conviction that you have because a group of people have convinced you that this is the way to think. And I'm talking about even church stuff. Mm-hmm. Just because you go to church and the guy behind the pulpit says something that moves you to move down to the altar, does that mean that you've actually had a spiritual awakening? I don't think so. I think a spiritual awakening goes deeper than that. Can that happen during that time? Absolutely, it can. But I think there is a difference between a spiritual experience and a spiritual awakening. And I just kind of want to get your guys' thoughts on it. I will tell you this, that everything, as I was researching this in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, I discovered that AA's approach on it is they're kind of using both terms as the same thing. I think they're different. What do you think? Roger, I'm going to start with you.
Yeah, I think they're definitely different. I think a spiritual awakening is some sort of profound religious or spiritual upheaval, if you will, in your soul. And I think spiritual experiences are just that, something when you're in context and contact with God, you can have an experience that draws you closer, some experience that puts you in direct connection with God. And I have those all day. I think you can have those all day long. But a spiritual awakening is I think the book even describes it as a profound religious upheaval.
Mm-hmm. What do you think, Dave? You see a difference?
So I'm trying to think of a way to explain this. So I think it is it's two parts to the same thing. Does that make sense? Like, so if I'm reading the book, I'm reading like a paragraph and then the bullet points under it.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe the first part, if we're looking at it from this description as reading a book, like the first paragraph is my spiritual experience.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
And then the bullet points are what happens as a result of that is the spiritual awakening. And maybe the bullet points are different moments in time that build upon that experience.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because to me, when I look at it, when I have my, I've talked about my spiritual experience, I guess I would call it, is when basically I was in detox and it was like God flipped a switch and removed my addiction, right? And that, I don't think, I don't want to get into a whole bunch of other stuff, but that's like where I was able to start building upon my spiritual awakening. Like I had already had some knowledge of some things, but it was all polluted by my chemicals that I was putting in my body. So the experience removed those chemicals from my mind so that I was able to think clearly, and then I could look down at each one of these experiences as they happen. So the first year I had a ton of, like Roger was saying, these different experiences. I had some like significant in the first year and a half experiences, but that also built on my spiritual awakening. It added to that and improved it and made it bigger and more important. I was able to see a lot of things that
So your awakening came as a result of things that happened in your spiritual experiences as they were building up in your life. Yeah.
In a sense, like, this can go, it could be a whole show on this. I was starting to get, have my spiritual awakening when I was like 12 years old. Only I didn't realize what was going on.
Right.
So, and at the point where I had my experience, that I actually saw it and experienced it big time. That for me anyway was God basically telling me, "Hey, dude, you need to wake the hell up."
Right.
Because I got a job for you, and you need to get busy because you're slacking off here, going, "What's going to happen next?" Give me a sign, and then here's your sign. But it's like, well, I wanted this sign that's like burning bush. The heavens opening up.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting there waiting, right? And so I think part of everything that at least from my personal experiences, everything that I had been doing in my life was contributing to that spiritual awakening. I've become more awake because I think it's, when you say awakening, that's like the beginning point. When you say awakening, that's when you're just waking up.
Right.
That's not like the end game or where you're going to get to, because that's the awakening is where I started from. The rest of it is just building upon that.
Okay.
I don't know if that makes any sense.
Yeah,
so when the big book talks about them being the same, that's how I think about it.
Gotcha. Is
you have the experience, and then the rest is like you're building upon that experience as the awakening.
That's good. That's good. So I'm thinking about some of the experiences that I've had that are spiritual experiences, but not necessarily spiritual awakenings. One of our favorite things, or one of my wife's favorite things to do, and it's one of my favorite things to do because it really feeds her spirit and lifts her up, is to go to the coast and watch the sunset. Right. So I'm sitting there with my very best friend in my entire world, because she is, sitting next to her with my arm around her, holding her hand, and we're watching the sun go down, watching her face, enjoy that moment. For me, that is a spiritual experience. I'm experiencing something spiritual. We're making a connection with each other.
Right.
I'm enjoying watching her enjoy this thing that means a lot to her. There isn't necessarily this aha moment going on. There's not an awakening going on, or any kind of white light experience kind of thing. But it's just an experience. It's very positive, and it ministers to my spirit. It ministers to her spirit. When we went over the coast one year, and we made these. In fact, if you're watching on YouTube, there's a picture of it. These glass things, paperweight, if you will. But they teach you. You go through this little course, and they teach you how to blow glass, and make these paperweights, or you can make the floating bowl things or whatever.
Is that like yarn inside?
No, that's all glass. So you take this hot glass and that's on the end of this pole, right? Yeah. And it's just melted on there, and you dip it in the different colors of glass that are in little pieces, and that's the red, white, and blue. Those are the colors I picked. And then you spin it, right? And it's spun in a wooden kind of like half bowl thing to make the shape, and then they cut it off with these giant scissor
I've
things.
seen how they do it. I was just curious on
it's amazing
what the, because it almost looks from here, it almost looks like there's yarn inside of glass.
Yeah, it's very 3D-ish, But anyway, as we were doing that, for me, it was such an enjoyable experience, this connection we were having making these together. It was very spiritual, I will sit out in my backyard when Nala passed away, and it wasn't. Everybody knows that a few weeks ago we had to say goodbye to our beloved dog, and when she passed away, there's a spot out in the backyard that she always sat in. It's Nala's spot, If I'm working late in the studio at night and I'm getting ready to lock up and go back into the house, I'll say, "Good night, Nala." Now I know she's not sitting there, right? But because of that spiritual connection that we had, it's kind of a spiritual experience. It's not an awakening, though. My spiritual awakening, there was a transformation that took place in my heart, in my psyche, in my life, that changed me permanently. It did something, and it wasn't something that I did on my power. It was something God did in me. That was a spiritual awakening. I will say that in the 12th step, it talks about having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps.
Yeah.
Right? I believe that's because if you actually do that work, you have a transformation experience.
So let me ask you a question, because I know some of our listeners may be even wondering about this too. Is what was your steps to have that awakening? You know what I'm saying? If this makes sense. So we talk about it as a result of these steps, but we also make comments about, we have to do something. We can't just sit there and be like praying about it and then saying, I want this to happen, or reading a book and then having this happen. We actually have to do something.
We have to participate
physically. What are the things that you did to participate or that helped that process of the awakening?
So you're absolutely correct. I mean, for a long time, sitting in the 12-step rooms, I read the steps, therefore I had done them. That was my thinking, right? But nothing was changing. There was no spiritual awakening. There wasn't even a spiritual experience. I was just reading these things, wondering why there was no transformation. And you're exactly right. There was no transformation because I wasn't participating in the change process. It wasn't until I actually started doing the work, right? Going back to step one, admitting that I needed a power greater than myself in step 2 and step 3 to be able to do these things. And then I sat down and with the sponsor actually did the inventory work on paper and started doing some honest self-assessing of me, and looking at some of the difficult pieces of my life that before I just would have soon not have done, and things started to change slowly.
Yeah.
And then when I got to the 5th step, actually confessing those things, and then in 7, 8, 9, and moving into the amends and making amends with people, to my creditors, to people that I'd hurt, and setting the record straight and making it right, and then maintaining this life of recovery. And then probably the biggest piece, Dave, is I had to come to a place where I realized that I had to be dependent on the power that was enabling me and giving me the power to do that stuff. Otherwise, I was leaning on the methodology and not the method giver.
Right.
And that came as a result of a still small voice telling me, Monty, once you stop depending on your prayers and start depending on the one you're praying to, you're gonna get well.
Yeah. Can I share something?
Yes, absolutely.
So along those same lines, is like from what my experience is similar but different, or maybe you have the same thing. But so as I'm doing those things, right, I'm
right.
Start working the steps and meet with a sponsor and do all those things. But I'm also praying daily, like, God, make me, help me be of service to others, and point me in the direction you want me to go today, and things that you want me to do to help grow my whatever. And so even though I'm doing the step work, because it can take a long time. So, but in between there, right, things come up, like some might be aware of Alpha, right? Alpha is a course for early Christians in their church.
Yeah, the Alpha program. Yeah.
So
I went through that. Yeah.
I did this program, and then they had this at the end. The first time I just went through, and I didn't do the last part, which was the weekend away. The second time, God actually pressed on me. I kept nagging at me, like, go be a part of this, and like do whatever's asked of you. So I was asked to be like one of the group co-leaders or whatever.
Yeah.
And I said, okay. So then I did the weekend away, and that thing, it changed that was one of those experience that launched my awakening exponentially farther.
Yeah.
I had this experience with God there, but it started out with just like a suggestion, or this came across when I was in church. Oh yeah, we're doing this group next week, but whatever. And so I'm thinking, this is God wants me to go and be a part of this. I mean, I don't have anything to lose by doing it, and there might be something. And then the same thing happened we had these classes that came up, and I took these classes, and it answered every question I ever had about God and the whole process, and it was because we had two services, right? So during one service they had this class, and then they had the church service at the other one. And when I took that class, it was the only time they ever offered that class. They never offered it again.
Oh wow.
So it was like, it was one of those things. I mean, I know there was other people besides me that took that class that got something out of it, but it was like, this was like something that I know I had to take at the time. And I was able to actually, part of that was the person that was leading that class. I actually I call it a combination between a 5th and 10 step. So, we take that daily inventory on the 10 step, and I remembered something that I left out in my first 4 step, but I intended to do it on the second one, but then I forgot about it. So then I pulled my pastor and this leader from this class in and did like a little 5th step.
Right.
To process that last piece. And I don't think that would have happened if I hadn't been through that experience. And those things was like that ever since then. If I see something that's pointing me in a direction, that I have to look at it intuitively and spiritually and pray about it, is like, is this the direction you want me to go? It was even when I was trying to decide my life change. I had to pick a new career, and I went to college and took a couple of different classes in totally different areas. One area I was already been doing for years, basically all these roadblocks came up, and the other one was the counseling thing, and I barely did anything and got straight A's in every class. I don't even think I read one book. You know, so I'm thinking, okay, this is God. This is where you want me to go. So I just, it's like I give up. I guess this is what we're doing. But it's like, my point is like we have to see these things in our life that come up and point us in these directions, instead of leaning on our own understanding, saying, no, I don't want to do that. I'm too tired. I'm too busy. I don't think that applies to me. Just go do it, Because I mean, how busy were we in our addiction?
Right.
It's 24/7 obligation.
Yeah.
So even if we take half of that time and apply that to our spiritual awakening, how great would this world be?
So what I'm hearing you say, if you want to have a spiritual awakening, you have to be in it.
In it. To win it.
To win it. You have to do the stuff. It is said that he will not, God, meaning God, render us white as snow without our cooperation. Right? You just can't sit on your laurels, but you got to be in it. Roger, what do you think?
Yes. I think it's spelled out very clearly in the big book, where it talks about step 3. I definitely had spiritual awakenings as a result of the 12 steps. But as William James explains that, he talks about most of our experiences are what the psychologist William James calls the educational variety, because they develop slowly over a period of time.
Right.
That is clearly my story. And I think that's why Bill wrote in the 12 steps that we have spiritual awakening as a direct result of these 12 steps. I know in the big book on page 63, it talks, as we felt new power flow in, as we enjoyed peace of mind, as we discovered we could face life successfully, as we became conscious of his presence, we began to lose our fear of today, tomorrow, or hereafter. And the next sentence says we were reborn. The first time I read that, it blew me away. I mean, clearly that's a direct reference to the conversation between Nicodemus and Jesus.
Yes.
So, then below on that page says this was only a beginning, though, if honestly and humbly made an effect. Sometimes a very great one was felt at once. Next, we launched out on a course of vigorous action. And so starting with the personal house cleaning. But I think the spiritual experience is well defined as a variety of educational type. I mean, I'm constantly learning more and more about God and about Jesus, about the big book and about recovery, about emotional sobriety. It's a constant, wonderful journey of uncovering and discovering.
Yeah.
And it's powerful.
Yeah.
It's flat out powerful.
So that is
William James has talked a lot about by Silkworth and Bill.
That is a great segue into one of the last pages in the big book. Actually, the book is called Alcoholics Anonymous, for those who don't know. It's affectionately been nicknamed the big book. That's not its title. But in Appendix 2, in the back of the book, it is entitled Spiritual Experience, and I want to read this. The terms spiritual experience and spiritual awakening are used many times in this book, which, upon careful reading, shows that the personality change sufficient to bring about recovery from alcoholism has manifested itself among us in many different forms. Yet, it is true that our first printing gave many readers the impression that these personality changes or religious experiences must be in the nature of sudden and spectacular upheavals. Happily for everyone, this conclusion is erroneous. So now the next two paragraphs are describing the two different kinds that take place as far as spiritual experience and spiritual awakening. The first one, in the first few chapters, a number of sudden revolutionary changes are described. Though it was not our intention to create such impression, many alcoholics have nevertheless concluded that in order to recover, they must acquire an immediate and overwhelming God consciousness, followed at once by a vast change in feeling and outlook. That's one kind. Here's the second. Among our rapidly growing membership of thousands of alcoholics, such transformations, though frequent, are by no means the rule. Most of our experiences are what the psychologist William James calls the educational variety, because they develop slowly over a period of time. Quite often, friends of the newcomer are aware of the difference long before he is himself. He finally realizes that he has undergone a profound alteration in his reaction to life, that such a change could hardly have been brought about by himself alone. What often takes place in a few months could seldom have been done or accomplished by years of self-discipline. With few exceptions, our members find that they have tapped an unsuspected inner resource which they presently identify with their own conception of a power greater than themselves. Most of us think this awareness of a power greater than ourselves is the essence of spiritual experience. Our more religious members call it God consciousness. Most empathetically, we wish to say that any alcoholic capable of honestly facing his problems in the light of our experience can recover, provided he does not close his mind to all spiritual concepts. He can only be defeated by an attitude of intolerance or belligerent denial. We find that no one need have difficulty with the spirituality of the program. Willingness, honesty, and open-mindedness are the essentials of recovery, but these are indispensable. Now, the next quote, Alcoholics Anonymous claims that Herbert Spencer wrote this. I don't think so. I think it was William Packley. He was a British philosopher and theologian, died in 1805. Herbert Spencer was a socialist and a philosopher. I don't think this is Herbert, but nevertheless, whoever wrote it, it's genius. And it reads, "There is a principle which is a bar against all information, which is proof against all arguments, and which cannot fail to keep a man in everlasting ignorance. That principle is contempt prior to investigation." And that last paragraph tells me why so many never have a spiritual experience or a spiritual awakening.
Exactly. Fully concur with that.
I mean, that is a powerful appendix. I mean, that it is overwhelming to me. It's very welcoming. It's not saying that you have to fit in a box. Your experiences and awakenings may look a little different, but that if you're going to say, I don't need to have a spiritual connection at all, and you have contempt prior to actually, looking into this thing, it's going to be sad for you. And I don't think that's just for alcoholics. I think that's for people in life in general. You see people that have peace and serenity and are productive members of society. You will also find a healthy spirituality driving them in most cases.
And it doesn't have to be a church or even, the typical God. It's like everybody approaches their spirituality, from sometimes a different perspective. And we need to not be afraid of it. Some people go out in nature. Some people look at, different things. I personally, I always heard those. My higher power is a doorknob, which is ridiculous. But I can be somewhat okay with that because I know that if my God created everything in this world, that he created that doorknob too. So if that what takes you to get in the door is that doorknob, turning the doorknob to walk in the room, then so be it.
And there's really the core of what you're saying. If that's what it takes to get you in the door. So I mean, it talks about earlier on in this literature, it talks about any place is good enough to make a beginning, provided it makes sense to you. So it may not make sense to me. You may be, most people that are picking door, I actually, tell you the truth, I never met anybody that was actually serious about that. Right. They may have said that because they're kind of wandering in the dark on what to pick,
Or they had a bad experience with somebody in the church
else.
world,
Yeah.
religion.
But they really don't buy that, the light bulb theory and everything. But they're just kind of, whistling in the dark trying to find something. That's okay. As long as it isn't you. In reality, it is you if you're picking a doorknob, but that's not your focus. Your focus, you're making an attempt. You're willing to get outside of yourself. And as long as
you
you're
just read, Monty, it's open-mindedness and willing
right.
and honesty.
Right.
So if you search, you will find. I
yes.
tell people, you don't have to know anything about God. If you do the 12 Steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, God will meet you and reveal himself to you directly.
I 100% agree.
That's the way he rolls.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And on page 25, it sums it up great after what we just read in the appendix. It says, the great fact is just this and nothing less, that we have had a deep and effective spiritual experiences which have revolutionized our whole attitude toward life, toward our fellows, and towards God's universe. The central fact of our lives today is the absolute certainty that our Creator has entered into our hearts and lives in a way which is indeed miraculous. He has commenced to accomplish those things for us, which we could never do by ourselves.
Yeah.
You take that on top of what you read with spiritual experiences and contemporary investigation, and you can't help but be God. And it won't be a doorknob or a tree.
Right. Right. But we have to, and I kind of concur with Dave here, we have to be sensitive to people when they first come in.
Especially if we don't know what their story is.
We don't know what their story is. It drives me crazy when I hear people in meetings bash either church leadership or the recovery professional community, because you don't know who's in that room. There may be an alcoholic priest in there, an alcoholic pastor. There may be a CADC level 1, 2, or 3 in there, but he needs a meeting and he's come to get help. And you're bashing those two industries.
Yeah, well,
stop doing
those
that.
are the people running the meetings. They need to get out of there.
Yeah, because if they can't reel that meeting back, in to where we're staying on the topic, yeah, then that's a whole other show.
Yeah. That is a whole other show.
Oh boy,
not
isn't it? No. Well, so we'd like to hear from you. What do you think the difference between a spiritual experience and a spiritual awakening is? I'd love to get emails from you or comments. Maybe you don't think there's a difference at all. That's fine. We'd like to hear. So send us an email at take12radio@comcast.net. That's TAKE, the number 12, radio@comcast.net. Closing thoughts. First, you, Dave.
I would just, remember the old honesty, open mind, and willingness, and don't forget to send your questions in for the Ask It basket.
Indeedy. Oh, if you're watching on YouTube, there's our little gnome over there. He's got his microphone.
Walter? Good job, Walter.
Yeah, there you go.
No.
Roger, closing thoughts.
Yes.
Closing thoughts.
I like what it says at the end of 164. It says, abandon yourself to God as you understand God. Admit your faults to him and to your fellows. Clear away the wreckage of your past. Give freely what you find and join us. We shall be with you in the fellowship of the Spirit, and you will surely meet some of us as you trudge the road to happy destiny. May God bless you and keep you. Until then, make it a great day.
All right. Very well said. Next week, Tommy Bennett will be here to share his experience, strength, and hope. This guy's got a story. I got to tell you, there's a little town south of here called Junction City. This guy was brought into treatment 3 times by the chief of police. They just weren't going to give up on him, man. And he is just rocking recovery now and serving God. And so he's going to be joining us. He'll be in studio with us on next week's show. All right, our closing song this week, interestingly enough, is called I'm My Own God, and it's by Michael Purrington. Here's Michael.
They had a meeting about the 11th step, talking about some deity I've never met. They say he should be in charge of my spiritual condition, but I've already made a decision to put myself in that position. I am my own higher power. I am my own God. I am my own higher power. I am my own God. Maybe he's up there somewhere, maybe not. Maybe he's got a few things I ain't got. Knows more than me about life, but I doubt it. Oh well, what the hell, I'm not gonna think about it. I am my own higher power. I am my own God. I am my own higher power. I am my own God. Why should I try meditation and prayer? If he's anything like me, he doesn't care. I make him in my own image, so he's awfully distant. One moment he's far away, and the next instant he's non-existent. I am my own higher power. I am my own God. I am my own higher power. I am my own God. Time and time again I've tried so hard to pray, but our Father never lets me get my way. I prefer a lot of drama over a little bit of wisdom. In my mind, I'm better off without him than with him. I am my own higher power. I am my own God. I am my own higher power. I am my own God. I am my own higher power. I am my own God. I am my own higher power. I am my own God.
And there you have Michael Purrington's song pointing out the ridiculousness of being your own creator, or at least thinking that you're God, right? Yeah, I am my own God. Wow, what a mess. Listen, have you had a spiritual experience? Have you had a spiritual awakening? Do you know the difference in your life? If you'd like to comment on today's show, please email us at Take12Radio. That's TAKE, the number 12, radio at Comcast.net. Until our next broadcast, this is the Monty Man along with the rest of the Take 12 Recovery Radio family, and we are wishing God's perfect serenity for you.
This has been a broadcast of KHLT Recovery Broadcasting.
Kitty, 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 kitty.